It's day 4 of the Irish Stew Off the Beaten Craic road trip when we take you knee-deep into the bog to learn about the innovative program Peatlands for Prosperity. And I'm John Lee.
And I'm Martin Nutty. This episode is made possible by our travel partner, Tourism Ireland, who helped us in so many ways. And they can help you too with all the information and inspiration you need for your next trip to the island of Ireland at ireland.com. So day 4, we headed out of Athlone due south to a little village by the name of Shinrone. A gentleman by the name of Joseph Carney came from there. And Joseph Carney is the 7th great-grandfather of Barack Obama. Now, how about that?
Martin, we got to look at this because Carney is one of my family names too. So I'm cousins with Barack Obama until proven otherwise.
But that day, if you remember, it was pretty miserable because Hurricane Umberto, or at least its residue, was lurking out in the Atlantic and decided to come on shore to Ireland, at least its remnants did, making for a rather wet drive. Maybe not the best day to visit the bog, but hey, you only go down to Shinrone once or twice in a lifetime.
Well, despite the bad weather, and maybe it was a good weather for slogging around the bogs, we found ourselves at the farm of Donie Regan. And there we met both Donie and Douglas McMillan, the general manager of Green Restoration Ireland and leader of its Peatlands for Prosperity project. Donie's farm now is a demonstration farm for this project, and it's an innovative program designed to maximize the natural carbon storage potential of bogs, which cover 14% of Ireland, and support farmers with innovative, sustainable ways to generate income on their bogland. We dove right into the bog up to our knees, and now we're back in Donie's warm, comfortable farm to settle in for our conversation.
Delighted to be in the borderland of Offaly and Tipperary. I'm joined by Donie Regan, who was kindly hosting us with a lovely lunch, and by Doug McMillan. We're going to be talking all things bog here, because in this part of the world, one should embrace the bog. So, with that, gentlemen, welcome to you both to Irish Stew.
Thank you. We especially appreciate the setting here as we've been trooping around the bog, ankles deep in the muck, and now we're sitting around in a nice cozy dining room having some tea and cakes, and it really feels good to be snug and warm inside. But let's start off. The cornerstone of the podcast here is something called Peatlands for Prosperity. And Doug, that's your program. That's what you're spearheading. What's the problem and what's the solution?
So the project is essentially looking at peatlands. So there's a lot of farm peatlands here. So that would be part of it. Typically that would be grassland. But alongside that, the farmers that have that, they have what we call cutover, which would have been harvested in the past for peat to heat the house. And then typically a lot of the cases just left. There also might be a bit of damaged bog as well. There could be some plantation forestry. And I suppose I'm general manager of Green Restoration Ireland. So we're a non-profit co-op. And what we want to do is find ways of getting income, diversifying income, getting more money to farmers using sustainable agricultural methods.
So let's just clarify a couple of things. Use two terms, peatland and bog. How do those two things tie together?
Okay, so peatland is anywhere where there's organic soil. So you'd have different types. So here in the Midlands, you can have fen, which would have more nutrient-rich peatland. It would be more lush. You can have bulrushes, reeds, you can even have wet woodland. And then as it grows, a fen will turn into a raised bog, which is a different beast altogether, as you're seeing. It's more open, it's very nutrient depleted. So there's the raised bog, there's the fen, and then of course there's all the variations on that, because a bog, or peat, or whatever you want to call it, is 97% water. So to do anything with it, you need to drain it. You put the drain in, drop the water down to 85%, and then you can cut it with a slane, and then you can get turf. So that's how the bogs were first reclaimed.
For our listeners who may not be up on all the terminology, a slane is...
Well, I never use one. Donie, did you ever use this?
I saw my father using it back in the early 70s as well. It's, for all intents and purposes, like a spade. but it has an angle on it as well. So that's what cuts the turf out and you throw it up. That's specifically designed. It's like a spade, but it has a right angle on it.
I will say that I actually used one as a 12-year-old in Connemara and tried to cut bog. It was extraordinarily heavy for a 12-year-old. But yes, it is an interesting device, so I'll lay claim to that.
So when I first came across a project, and I think I'm not 100% wrong, but I think I learned a lot more today looking around. I thought the project was focused on reclaiming the land that had been basically damaged by the cutting of turf for fuel. But it's that and more, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. And just to finish the point I was making, so that's part of a lot of farms is probably wasteland dirty, it's just sitting there.
Oh yeah, just sitting there for years. We were going back, I'd say, to early 70s since we cut turf down there. Now, there are a couple of individuals that are cutting turf over at the very far corner, but it's not cut with the same either, it's mechanically cut. But yeah, it's the early 70s since we cut that. So it was just left there. We did intend to drain it at some stage. We did open up a water course all along the edge. We opened up a few drains up into the bog with the intention of draining it. We never did. But as it turned out now, we're closing it.
And you would open up drainage to dry out the bog, so the bog then could be harvested, so to speak. The turf could be cut.
Yes.
Right?
And then after it can also be reclaimed for agriculture. That would be typical. So typically you'd have the outer edge of the bog would be reclaimed for grasslands. But then in a lot of cases, there's a lot of work and cost and effort in reclaiming. So a lot of the time it's just abandoned.
Oh, it is. And I suppose we're talking about carbon and all the rest of it. I regard that as a small bog. There's roughly around 100 acres in that bog. There's any amount of those dotted around Offaly, Tip, Westmeath. And it's a pity that there's not more emphasis put on those to actually do as Doug is doing. Leave them be, let them develop back into what they naturally were. But unfortunately, that's not happening. There's any amount of those small little bogs with nothing.
And I suppose that's where we come in, is where does the money come from this? I'm going to say it's wasteland, it's no use to the farmer. And because all peat is all organic, so it's all carbon, you can burn it on the fire, but if it's drained, it's on a slow burn. It's like the stew on the back of the stove. It's continually degrading and emitting. So the bog has been cut over, but the drains are still there. So you also get scrub, woodland comes in, which is good, but it's trees in the wrong place because they dry the peat out even more and they exacerbate the problems. You get lots of CO2 into the air, you get carbon and nutrients into the water, so you get water pollution. So where's the money going to come from? So what we say is, look, we have a peatland standard for Ireland now. It's all about how wet the peat is. So if the peat is drained to a metre and you can raise it up near the surface, just to give you an idea, about 15 centimetres of peat is more carbon than in a mature spruce wood. So that's a whole lot of carbon. And if you restore that, you get a lot of avoided emissions. So that's one income stream, is maybe the carbon credits. You get the baseline, and then you raise the water and you get paid for the difference. But then also there's this whole load of new crops that we're experimenting with. That's what we're looking at, because no one in Ireland knows agriculture is dry agriculture. You drain it and you do stuff. And nobody's ever looked at actually, if we bring it back to what it was, which was wetland, that fixes all the environmental problems. What can we grow there? And the answer is a lot.
So you say 15 centimetres of boglands, the equivalent. So that 15 metres cubed? Is that what?
If you take a depth, like 15, 20 centimetres of peat depth is like a mature woodland. So basically the shallowest bit of the cut over here is about 1 metre deep. So do the maths, and then it goes out into the middle of the bog. It's up to 12 metres deep. If you look at the giant redwood forests, you have these huge trees and little insects at the bottom. There are people. You'd have 3 times the carbon storage. So bogs are the most resource space efficient ecosystems for storing carbon because they just keep growing on top of each other. That carbon is accumulating every year when it's healthy. But when it's drained, it's on that slow burn. So that's all going back into the air.
Explain that a little bit, because I found that really fascinating, that the bogs are disappearing into the air, that the farmer's saying, oh, the rocks are coming up in my field, and that's not what's happening.
That is a fact, because that claim was possibly about 1 metre deep originally. Then when we did cleaning up of it, it's down to about, it's just 7, 8 feet deep in parts. And over a number of years, not immediately, but over a decade, we saw that the land on this side, it actually just evaporated, really. And if you went down there now, it's about 5, 6 inches max to that matter. Now, when you get to that stage, there's no further you go because farm doesn't exist. Simple as that. Uncultivated after that, yeah. And the other thing that we did find was that even going around the fields, it's amazing every so often you'll see rocks appearing. And that's telling you, it's not the rocks are coming up, they're then going down.
And we got on some of the other farms in the project, and where they've reclaimed it, the rocks start to emerge, the tree stumps from thousands of years ago emerge, and they're like, oh, it's coming out. But no, the peat is disappearing. And just to explain how that works, if you think of it, if you imagine a lawn and you have the grass, because it's dry, when that grass dies, all the carbon in the grass will go back into the air as carbon dioxide because the insects, the bug, the microbes, the fungi will eat all of that and they get it back into the air. Whereas on a bog, because it's wet, the bog is 97% water, there's very little oxygen, and also the sphagnum moss that dominates a bog has a neat trick of making it more acid, which kills bacterial activity even further. If you have a blade of grass, let's say, or let's say a heather, maybe only 70 to 80% of that will degrade, and the rest will accumulate, and that's the peat. So this is why organic soil is all carbon, but you can dry it and burn it. So it keeps piling up. A healthy bog grows about 1 millimeters depth a year, a fen about 2 millimeters a year. So every depth, also there's a huge archaeology in there, right? The history. So there's 1 meter of peat is 1,000 years. So it can keep growing on top of itself indefinitely.
Hence the term raised bog. I hear you using the word reclaimed. And it's funny because the word reclaimed sounds like a good thing. But in this case, maybe not. And I think the case you're making for what we traditionally saw as wasteland or scrubland or unusable land. So we're draining it so we can do more traditional agriculture. And now all of a sudden we're saying, no, that there are other opportunities there by keeping bogland as wetland. Now, your project is taking land that's already been damaged and then restoring that.
In here, what we're looking at is about 20% of the original bog is left. That's about 12 meters deep. And we have one of the things in Ireland, we have about 50-60% of all of the remaining raised bog in Western Europe. As a natural heritage, it's amazing. So that bit in the middle can be restored, and there's potential carbon credits from this. But this damage, as you said, Martin, that cut over land around this, okay, it looks natural, it's full of trees, but it's still causing a lot of environmental issues in terms of the emissions to the air, to the water. So what we're proposing, we get the water back up, that fixes all the environmental problems. We can get maybe the carbon money, and then we can produce stuff. We want to reclaim or restore this through wetter agriculture. It's not the traditional dry, drain and grow.
Probably restore is a better word. You're restoring it to what it should be.
But the point is, it's not going to be what it was before.
No.
It'll be something different, but it will be a type of wetland, and that wetland can include valuable crops that can get income for the farmer. And that's the kind of the key, because we have over 1 million hectares of degraded peatlands in Ireland. There isn't any money for this. So we see this as a win-win opportunity for the farmers that have this abandoned bogland to get income and then actually restore it. So actually restoring the land through a new kind of agriculture is the trick.
What are some of the plants that you're experimenting with that you see a good future with to produce good income for farmers?
So what we have, you say this is Donie's farm, we call it the showroom because we've got a very small space. And that's exactly the question the farmer's going to ask. So what the hell uses wet peat? So we want to show them what the options are. So we have the bog berries. So we have the high bush blueberries that you get in the supermarket. These are bog plants. Cranberries are bog plants. We have black chokeberries, aronia. We have lingonberries. These are all the berries on the side of things. You can grow the herbs. You can grow mint. You can grow oregano. We can grow vegetables as well. Yeah. We have paludiculture forestry. That's a big issue in Ireland. Is 40% of our forestry is on peat. It's Sitka spruce. It doesn't like wet conditions. We need to replace that with something. So we have the timbers. We have alder. We have American sweet gum. We have dawn redwood. That's all grown. We have the bulrushes, or probably cattails is what people know them as, but bulrushes in Ireland, which can produce materials for clothing and construction materials. We have the sphagnum moss itself, which can be used for terrariums and for orchid growing.
We saw a little bit of trial and error going on there too. This was better this year. This was better last year. Let's try this again. What was that bio that you mentioned?
Biocharcoal.
Oh, biochar, yeah. So that'd be another thing. But just to finish on that point you're making about trial and error. So yeah, we did the vegetables last year with the chicken manure and they did well.
Certain vegetables do well. Now last year, some of them did very well. This year they didn't. Now, look, there could be several factors. I even seen it in our own vegetable garden. And I feel every single year There'll be certain vegetables that'll go very well this year, and the following year they won't. Like, we had a massive crop of peas in that bog last year. This year, the pods grow perfect. They're all native peas that we had. But there was nothing in them. There was no peas. So we have to figure out, why did that happen? Now, in relation to the blueberries, the cranberries, all of those, they're fine. They go. But it's the other ones that we have to try and see, why are they growing one year and they're not the other year, So that's something we have to follow up on more.
So I think we have the makings of and if I'm pronouncing this word correctly, a paludiculture book.
Yeah.
And I was intrigued by the scale of the opportunity in Ireland, because I think you said there was something like 120,000 hectares of what was formerly raised bog, which had been cut away, meaning it had been depleted.
More than that, it'd be probably 150,000 upwards hectares of cut over, yeah?
And so all these plants, etc., with the variety of uses, become possible crops generated out of this land. And Donie's farm has become the workshop to demonstrate, and we're still experimenting, obviously, to figure that out. But this is an extraordinary opportunity. But the question is, how do people make the transition, or how do we encourage people to make the transition to start engaging in this kind of farming? Because it is a totally different type.
Yes, new kind of farming, yeah, it's completely new. Just to finish on the crop side, I think, as Donie was saying, some things are straightforward. So the berries, the cattails, the trees, I suppose the more robust plants, this is very straightforward. It's the fussier things like the vegetables that we're working on. And you were asking John about the biochar. I said last year we used a different type of manure, this one, another one, which didn't do so well. So we also have a lot of this cut over woodland, which comes in. And what we've done here at Donie's farm is it's been rewetted. What happens is all of the trees that like dry conditions die off. You're left with the birch and the willow that likes wet conditions. And that makes a very rare habitat, wet woodland. But then also what we propose is we can coppice this, you can make biochar, which is long-term carbon storage. You can charge this with nutrients, put it in slurry. And that's something I think we want to try with the vegetables, just to see, because it's the key thing is that when the water is up, the peat stops degrading, because the peat is carbon, but it's also got nutrients associated with it. And this is why it's good for grassland. It disappears, the field disappears, but in doing so it releases nitrates, feeds the grass. That would also feed the vegetables. So we need to replace that nutrient supply. So that's the thing.
It sounds like you found a partner here with Donie, because besides hosting us at your farm here, you had a long career with the Department of Agriculture. And I understand you spent a lot of time making future work here for
Yeah, I was thinking ahead for Doug. In my past employment, the first 2 years I spent in Cavan, reclaiming land. Big expense. And now I'm gone.
You're in purgatory now, Donie.
So
trying to atone for your sin.
And of course, there'll be lots of people who'll be giving me digs about that too. But yeah, I suppose you asked the question, like, how do you get farmers to come around to that? That's the biggest, most difficult thing. Now, the smaller farmer will come around to it quicker, because he probably looked at things different. He wouldn't be getting the same income out of farming, so they'll try anything that they can get a few more bob out of. Whereas the dairyman does not want to know, because the fertilizer out, milk coming in, bye-bye. And that's the unfortunate part of it. And I suppose that's something that we have to work on, really. I suppose, lucky enough around here, there are a number of dairy farmers, but there are a number of beef farmers, which we're hoping will come in on it.
So are your neighbours looking at what's going on here and saying, what is Donie up to?
Definitely, but they wouldn't be saying it to me.
So how did you two come together? What's the backstory?
How that came about is back at the very start, 3 years ago now?
Yeah, I think so.
Like the
Back in
Department
the
of-
midst of time.
Yeah. The Department of Agriculture was the crowd that dealt with it. So we got a letter here one morning saying, have we expressions of interest? Have we any interest in what this is going to take part in? Cadet and myself was here, and we were ifing and butting about it a good bit. Now again, see, it goes back down. We're small, with a small holding. You won't make a fortune out of it. Both of us work, but you always look at the team. There might be a few bob in it. There might be something in it for us. And we said, sure, look at it. We'll sign the dotted line. Let it on.
And that was the Farm Carbon Innovation Project. So it was looking at all of the emissions from peat grasslands. So that was the original project.
Then Doug arrived on board, and that's simple as that. That's how it happened.
And then you said, I'm in trouble now, when he showed up.
Yeah. No, but to be honest with you, we're happy enough. And we spoke about this before. I'd say I'm nearly 70 now, and I suppose it was 12 or 14 was the last time I remember turf being cut on our section. There's about 30 different people on sections of that bog. And I suppose I rarely stood on that bog since. The fact, we got married in 1980, and my wife, Colette, I think she might have stood on the bog once. That's a fact. Yeah. So since this started up, we're constantly out in the bog. But not alone that, we're just seeing, you look out at the bog, oh, it's bog. But as the seasons go around, particularly in the spring and early summer, the different colours, the different things going on in the bog, it's just unbelievable. The different wildlife. Like, we didn't have this for years, but that's all back now.
There's the duck and the dragonflies. And
yeah, we always had a few ducks coming in because there are rare ducks in it at the moment. But I just find that they're staying longer now. And the dragonflies, I haven't seen dragonflies in years, but the place is little with them down there now. It's lovely. I suppose maybe the time of the year you're here, if it was there around the year, it's just a haven, you know. And even the birds, the different wildlife, I suppose our biggest problem is a pine marten. There's only a amount of them down there. And they're causing an issue too, because they're going to go after young birds or whatever, and that is an issue. A few years ago, there was 14 barnouts were located in that bog down there. We have none at the moment, and there's not a doubt about it. It's down to pine marten mink.
I picked up a brochure about how to protect your chickens from pine martens.
Interestingly, as I understand it, the grey squirrel, which had been introduced from America into Ireland, the pine martens actually did a job on eradicating those and brought back the red squirrel. But what nature gives, nature takes as well. And so the question is, how do you manage around all of this stuff so, you know, you maintain a healthy ecology?
That's
so,
the problem.
Yeah.
You mentioned the hens there. We always had hens right up to last February. We just stopped because he just, pine marten, no matter how well you fence it.
Yeah, man.
Marten come in, kill everything, so there's no point to it.
Just to come back, you were asking Martin about how to get farmers on board. So obviously this is a key way. We got a demonstration farm. There's another one as well, and we're going to set up other farms. And it's farmers can come and see stuff growing. They can talk to Donie and the other farmers and hear what the experiences are. And then I suppose as part of the project as well, there's money to get it working. As part of this project, what we're doing, where the farmers are interested, we've been out surveying farms. We look at all their grasslands, their cut over, their bog. We measure the carbon stored there. If they're interested, we put loggers in to get money in terms of carbon credits, and then we recommend more crops to grow. So we get them going, but we're only a short project, but then there's huge potential, but that's going to need investment. So that's also what we're looking at. How do we get the income?
The carbon credits is this sort of seed money that gets us going. Is there like a biodiversity credit, or is that
There is, but I don't agree with that. It's because I think basically the biodiversity is the water comes back and all the wildlife and the flora and the fauna. It just comes back because basically if you think about it, formerly this is wetland, it was dried, so it's a dry, and all the stuff that was in the soil is inactivated. When the water comes back, it pops up. All these flowers come back, all these insects, they just appear because it's already there. So for me, what we need is the key thing is to get a decent price for a ton of CO2. So at the moment it's languishing about 30 euros a ton, which is pretty useless. It has to be about 100 before it becomes interesting. So that's talking to the Peatland Finance Ireland, who have in charge of this standard. That's their understanding. That's what it's going to be. And the way you do this is it's not just carbon, it's all of this biodiversity. This is a biodiversity hotspot because of the work that we've done. The biodiversity, there's also the clean water. Now the water coming from the peat is no longer full of nutrient and carbon. It's clean water. There's regular water supply and ecosystem services. When it's drought, there's a water supply. And when there's too much rainfall, it regulates the flooding. And then, of course, the other thing is it's going to keep Donie and other farmers in business and living in the rural community, because that's the other issue is succession. And people live in the countryside.
Yeah, we're in here since the early 1800s. I don't know what's going to happen from here on. We have a son, all right, but he's a teacher down there, right, for him. Whether he'll ever come back, I don't know, but you never know.
Did you ever get to a place and say, you know what, this really isn't for us? I don't see a lot of potential here. If a farmer says, take a look at my land, can you help me?
No. It's all there. Look, peat is carbon, and there's more or less carbon depending on how deep it is. It's all there. It's just untapped potential. It's like a stranded asset that the farmers have, and they're not doing anything with because they don't know how to do it. So we'd come along and say, look, these are the options, and we want to try and help you get going on it.
I think the other big issue is that our government or our Department of Agriculture hasn't come up really with what way they're going to handle carbon credits. And also, of course, there's a group out there that turf cutters, and they are usually vocal, and there would be linked as well to the farming organisations, and they want turf to continue.
They have a cultural heritage argument that they probably make, right?
Well, there's that in it. But I think the lads that are shouting the loudest are the guys that are cutting it commercially. That is just one off that. Now, it's illegal to sell turf, but it is happening. But having said that, that's going to be the biggest issue. And rewet, I think there was a word used, rewet. Rewet was a completely wrong word, because you've probably seen some of it on your way up from Athlone. If you go from here to Athlone, you have Boredom all along in a lot of it. And all you see now is Boredom is gone. They have it all flooded. And of course, the first thing a farmer will say, I don't want this. And that's exactly, when you mention rewet to a farmer, it's wetting my land. Simple as that. And that's the big issue with farmers. I'd see neighbours here of mine now. Some of them definitely would be in it, but to be other than KG and us, and but a lot of farmers in Ireland, they'll wait and see what happens for, and they'll clear the guinea pig for, and then they'll decide.
But as what I was saying about farms like this are key, because they can come and see this is not a lake. This is stuff growing here. This is why we need more farms like this. Farmers locally can come and say, oh, actually, that's not correct, because we need to correct that misunderstanding. You were saying, Martin, about the turf cutting. Okay, so there's a certain amount being cut, but proportionally it's tiny. And what we're focusing on is the stuff that is being cut and it's being abandoned. So nobody's doing anything with it. That's it. So let's start with easy, the low-hanging fruit. Nobody's getting anything from it. And there's such potential for everything, for the environment, for the biodiversity, carbon, water, and people, and income. And then we get on to the other stuff.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the back end is not there from government departments on that. Because we're all talking about, oh, get rid of turf cut. Start in the places where there is no turf, that's abandoned. See how it works. And I often said it to do here. Back in the early 90s, we started a scheme, and I was working with the Department of Agriculture. We started a scheme on the Laois Offaly border and in Connemara as well, in Clifton. And it was just very simple job. Don't put out much fertiliser. Don't cut your hay, your silage to certain dates. Put up nice gates, do little simple things, and it took off. And within 2 years, in that little small area, in fairness to the Department of Agriculture, they picked the right areas, because there were small farms in medium land, and all of them lads jumped into it. I was in the middle of it myself. It was absolutely brilliant. But after those 2 years, the Department of Agriculture brought on a scheme which was called REPS. That was the first one in. And like that, came in all over the country. It took off. In 90% of the farms, took off. That was for 5 years. Came on with another 5 years. Then they came on with another scheme. And to this day, those schemes are flying. It can happen, but it has to start small.
You have to craft it. You have to trial it.
That's correct.
And
yes.
the smaller farmers, because they're a bit more open, because, and I hate to use the term hobby farmer.
The truth is, Martin, that is the case. Hobby farmer, as in, they're all working outside of the...
There's a better term, because hobby sounds like you're not serious.
Yeah.
Part-time farmer.
Part-time farmer, I think it seems, a small holding part-time farmer seems to be the rich area to trial this stuff, and then you can scale.
Yeah, but and you're dead right with the hobby farmer, because a lot of the, say, IFA or whoever represents the big farmers, that's always their word, hobby farmer. Those hobby farmers are putting a hell of a lot more into the country than a lot of them are, in the sense that they're paying their taxes, they're small farmers, and they develop whatever they can,
Let me ask Doug, you're changing it up a little bit. You're a man with some passion on this topic. You seem ready to explain it, re-explain it, answer stupid questions from me. Where did you get this passion? Did a lot of things come together for you in this kind of work?
I've always tried to find a way of making a living that is doing good stuff, right? So I tried various things over the years. I was an environmental consultant. I did a lot of management system consultancy in companies and training. I did all the different systems, environment, energy, quality, health, safety, lab. But I found it was frustrating because it's real box ticking. And I'm very clued into the state of the environment, the state of the world. There's problems everywhere in terms of income, people earning money, environmental destruction, etc. I set up Green Restoration Ireland because it was my belief that we got a lot of damaged peatlands in Ireland. And what I found with management systems work is the people that are doing the work, like farmers, they really want to do something, but they don't have advice, they don't have support, they don't have help to do this. And if you give them that, then they'll do it, right? So that was the original idea. So we did some peatland restoration up in Mayo, just with semi-natural bogland. We did that. We helped the landowners do this. And then this EIP came up. And now I'm almost a farmer, right, Donie? I learn all about farming. I know about the price of cattle, when to cut the silage. And I suppose the thing here is that what I found frustrating with the management system stuff is there's so much that could be done, but that isn't done. And then with this project, I'm able to do stuff. I have a small holding as well, but it's small. And we need to do more. We need to have a bigger impact. And as I said, farmers, one part of your motivation, Donie, is the nature, right? It's not just income, but it's all the nature that was there before.
And along with that, I think I have this huge issue in relation to this dosing of cattle, fertilizer, this thing of, oh, you have to do it in 6 weeks, you have to do it, you have to do this, you have to check out. I do none of that. We shed a small bit of fertilizer, and again, another issue in that I reclaimed the field up the way here about 6 years ago, and what you're finding now, you buy the grasses off the merchants, and the grasses that they're supplying is grass that needs any amount of fertilizer. So that's money. When the war started in Ukraine, the price of fertilizer went up into the elements. But we cut back on that. Now we have all the grasses around on this side, is all old grasses. You never touched them. We put out no fertilizer on them. And they're given every bit as much grass as the field that we have to pile fertilizer on. We never, ever dose cattle. We never have an issue. Now, we never have an issue. We might give them blackleg vaccine if there was blackleg around the area. But I think if you start to give medication to cattle, it's a continuous thing then. So we don't do that. And to be quite honest with you, we take our wastelands into the Martin Osprey and we get every bit as much, if not more, for ours. So I'm a firm believer in that. And I despise to see lorry loads of fertilizer going up and down here in the spring. And it just gets to me.
And you've seen Donie's passion for this, right? So I'm able to go out and work with people on the ground who are doing stuff, who want to get it done. And just as we were saying earlier in the conversation, there's just this huge opportunity here where everyone can be a winner. So the farmers can get more and we can do all of this great environmental work. And it's to maintain rural communities. Just to add, in terms of the crops we're looking at, so we're looking at the wet multi-species sward so we can get grass. But then also we're looking at the high-value crops so we can get new high-income materials which can then be processed in rural communities. So we're at the early stages, but the potential is phenomenal. So coming out, we're getting lots of fresh air and fresh rain as well. It's great, it's healthy, and it's great to come and have tea and sandwiches with Donie and Colette. And they get great work done. And it's just there. This fruit has to be picked, right? So we just got to get out there. And as I was saying, here it is. This is it. This is all in one. This is the whole package. This is the silver bullet, right? So the potential is massive. And we're just starting out on the path, but this can be huge.
When we signed up that farm 3 years ago, little did we realise how much further we could go and to get the information and to look at things probably differently. And it has really opened our eyes and our minds to different ideas in it all. And as this is a training exercise here, we'll have an awful lot of people coming here, between farmers, agricultural consultants. You'll learn from everyone. Everyone has a different view and a different outlook. And it's lovely to hear different people's views. They'll have good ones and bad ones. I always said to you, we had 2 farming groups here in this acre scheme. And in that you have to do 1 day's training. That includes a half day inside and a half day on farm. So our local advisor here brought out several lots of farmers, but he brought out 2 particular gangs of farmers. And one were an older generation that did not want to know. Doug could tell you, all they wanted to do, sign the dotted line, get paid and out. And the following day, we had a younger generation. You couldn't get them out of the yard. This younger generation would probably look at things an awful lot different.
Just to be fair to the older generation, there is a big cohort of the older generation. Know what it was in the past, there was a lot more nature, and they're keen to get it back.
But if we could even get 25% of them to get into it, we'd be well with it.
We forgot to mention the Seamus plug, where the guest gets to promote something that's near and dear, like your organization. So if you want to put in a little Seamus plug for Peatlands for Prosperity or your website or...
Look, Peatlands for Prosperity, it's just a no-brainer, right? There's so much potential here. And what the project does is where farmers have those peatlands, you do the free survey, we'll tell you what you can get out of it and get you on the path to hopefully getting that income and having all of these great effects, these positive side effects. Green Restoration Ireland, we have the webpage, and it's all explained on this. And we just need to do this. It's a new kind of agriculture. It keeps the risk low because the cut over land isn't any loss to the farmer if it doesn't work. Now, it will work. We don't have to make it work, but it's low risk. And that's what we need to do it. Just sit in there. There's so much you can do in such a small area. I think you're familiar with the Pareto effect, right? You fix 20% of the problems and you get 80% of the results. With our peatlands, it's even better. You got this tiny area, relatively small area, and we can fix so many of our problems in this small area. So we're here to help to see what can be done. And yeah, just give us a shout.
Just another thing before we forget it is that we're also now bringing schools into it because we have to start early with them. All our local primary schools, we're trying to get them coming in. So next week now we have 4 different groups of primary school kids. Bring them now and see what's there. If they get interested in it, they'll tell their parents. I always maintain you start early with things and get them going. And if we can continue that, I suppose my big aim, not getting any younger, but I would love to see a roadway right around that bog that people can come out there, walk all around for a nice stroll, see what's there, and see the way it has developed when it's just left alone. And that'd be my goal. That I'd love to see that happen.
Now, from one last note, we're thankful for Tourism Ireland for helping us put on this trip and Falch Ireland. So you really, at the very end, hinted at an ecotourism aspect where people can come out and see what's going on here. And then they go back as the new ambassadors for this kind of work.
That whole ecotourism thing, as Donie said, there's that opportunity for the trail, the bog regenerating, and then all the things that can be grown on it. When the water comes back, it's transformed. So this is bog country, and you can imagine in the future what it might look like. If you can imagine the Midlands transformed, it would be an amazing tourist asset. Because at the moment, bare brown peat, it's not very attractive. But you can imagine that transformed into a vibrant landscape full of wildlife and new crop production and new agriculture.
And that is one of the healthiest and happiest things to be able to say, a more positive future to look forward to. And we will look forward to visiting in the decades to come and see this transformation. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Real passion there from Doug McMillan. And I have a new word for my lexicon, paludiculture, which is a fancy word for wetland farming. And you know what's fascinating about that is, given Ireland's climatic conditions, you would expect that the Irish would have specialized in this, but they haven't. Indeed, they spent lots of time trying to drain land so they could do dry land agriculture. Kind of madness in a way. And so, yeah, this is fascinating. It's a great opportunity, and you can really feel the passion.
Our thanks go out to Douglas McMillan and to Donie Regan for sharing these win-win situations for the boglands, for the environment, for the farmer's bottom line. And let's give added points to Donie for welcoming us wet and soggy into his warm home and giving us a pot of tea and some good things to eat. We really appreciate the Irish hospitality. Martin, where do we go next?
So next up, we head off to the beautiful town of Birr, specifically Birr Castle Domain. And we're going to shoot for the stars in this next episode when we talk to Brian Kennedy, a local historian that knows all about Burcastle, the Parsons family, and its unusual and maybe unexpected ties to the world of astronomy.
Martin, I especially look forward to sharing the story of the Leviathan of Parsonstown. So, everyone, thanks for listening in. Please do join us next week when once again we are off the Beaten Craic in the Hidden Heartland. And we thank our travel partner again, Tourism Ireland, and our media partner, irishcentral.com, for spreading the good word. Join us.
Irish Stew is produced by John Lee, Martin Nutty, and Bill Schultz. Editing, mixing, and mastering by Bill Schultz. Music on Irish Stew was composed and performed by Rosa Nutty, with Donald Bowens on drums, Cathal Reardon on bass and synthesizer. For more on Rosa Nutty's music, please visit rosanutty.com.